Joining our discussion now, John Heilemann, national affairs analyst for NBC News and MSNBC. He's the co-host and executive producer of Showtime's The Circus. Also with us, John Harwood, editor-at-large for CNBC, and David Frum, senior editor for The Atlantic and author of Trumpocracy, The Corruption of the American Republic. And John Heilemann, I know the president wants us to talk about what he said in the driveway, especially the lies about it's the Democrats' fault those kids are at the southern border.
That was sort of the point of it, right?
Yeah, that was,
let's throw out a lot of chum on the water and distract from the rest of the day's news.
Well, we don't often have days that are scheduled to be big news. And the Manafort news was
right there on the calendar.
Scheduled to be big news. We knew it was coming. And tonight is the president's campaign manager's first night in jail.
It is an amazing thing. And, you know, there are a lot of unprecedented things happen in the Trump administration, and we should note them all. But this one, the consequence of this, the seniority, it's not just that he's Donald Trump's campaign chairman. It's not just that he played a much bigger role than Donald Trump wants to admit, not just in terms of days, but the role he played at the moment when Trump was trying to fend off the possibility of a brokered convention, why he brought Manafort in to wrangle delegates, all the importance of the role. It's that he's been dealing with Paul Manafort for 30 years. Manafort and Stone, the touchstones, Roger Stone, the touchstone of his electoral life, Paul Manafort and that firm, the way in which Donald Trump understood Washington and how politics and business intersected in the world. For 30 years, the man lived in Trump Tower. He is a seminal figure in Donald Trump's life, and he gets at the thing that Trump has always wanted to wall off. What did I do in my business life that connected maybe to Russia over the course of a decade or more that led to 2015 and 2016 and 2017? The two people who were in that camp, Paul Manafort and Michael Cohen. Paul Manafort now in jail and under more pressure than he's ever been under to cooperate with prosecutors. It is a bad, bad day for Donald Trump.
David Frum, do you want to take a shot at that question of which one of them is sleeping better tonight, Donald Trump or Paul Manafort?
Well, here's something to trouble Paul Manafort's sleep. Do you remember that weird story about Paul Manafort paying a lot of money for carpets in a Virginia carpet store?
Yes.
A lot of money. And in a way that made it look like, well, maybe it was a $5,000 rug he bought and he paid $25,000 and got $20,000 reimbursed to him some way. The reason that story is important is if that story is true and maybe there's a perfectly innocent explanation for it, but if not, that's a crime under Virginia law, not under federal law. Paul Manafort owns all kinds of real estate in New York City. If that money, New York, before the Great Depression, was the center of financial regulation in the United States, and all of those financial regulations from before the Great Depression and the SEC are still on the books of New York State. He can trip over all kinds of New York State laws about fair dealing and wire fraud. And the president can't pardon those either. So that may trouble his sleep, that he has Virginia and New York State liability.
John Harwood, the president did finally talk about the Inspector General's report this morning on Fox and Friends. He was strangely silent about it yesterday. And, of course, you had summarized it in a tweet-size executive summary for him, which I read on the show last night, where there was no good news, really, for Donald Trump in the Inspector General's report. But he tried to invent a version of the Inspector General's report today that was somehow favorable to him personally.
Well, there are things that are unflattering to some people in the report, including James Comey, including Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. But if you look at the underlying reality of that report and what the Inspector General Michael Harwood concluded, it is that the investigation was conducted with integrity, and that the decision not to prosecute Hillary Clinton was also made with integrity. That is to say, not influenced by bias, not influenced by improper considerations, all drawing upon the experience, the law, and the past department practice. The one thing I want to add to what David and John were saying, I think the other thing that's going to trouble Paul Manafort's sleep, our colleague Ken Delanian this afternoon did some reporting about what the jail that we think Paul Manafort is going to, that place is crawling with cockroaches, and you've got a guy who has been used to an incredibly comfortable lifestyle that, according to Robert Mueller, was financed with ill-gotten gains, and he's sleeping with cockroaches tonight.
Paul Manafort's man who likes a high thread count, Lawrence. He likes the high thread count. The thread count in this penitentiary is not going to be so high.
The cockroaches are all part of the pressure on Paul Manafort. There's a way out of jail.
Right.
there's a way out of jail tonight. He doesn't have to even spend the entire night if he gets the word to Robert Mueller that he's willing to cooperate.
Well, and I'll say, Harry Lippman raised this when the Manafort witness tampering thing first came up. People speculate a lot about whether or not Trump has offered him a pardon secretly. It makes no sense. Now, Trump is obviously dangling pardons for a lot of people. But if you're Paul Manafort and if you believe, really confidently you believe that you're going to get a pardon from Donald Trump, why would you start tampering with witnesses? It makes no sense. So I think everyone who knows Donald Trump well, and Paul Manafort does, just like Michael Cohen does, none of them consider him reliable on this question. So he can dangle pardons, but no one considers him reliable in any aspect of his life for reasons of character that you've amply outlined on the history of this show. They all know him well enough to know you can't count on Donald Trump. Even if you had an ironclad contract, even if you had an ironclad promise, he could still renege, and he hasn't given out ironclad promises or contracts that anyone knows of so far on this matter.
And that is precisely the right point, guys, because, Lawrence, you talked about the void of empathy in Donald Trump, which he has made clear over and over. If you're Michael Cohen and you're the guy who said, I'll take a bullet for Donald Trump, I'll do anything for Donald Trump, it is obvious right now that he is feeling that Donald Trump has no intention of doing the same thing for him. Does Paul Manafort really think that the good wishes of President Trump are going to save him? Now, that doesn't mean the president may not pardon him, but if he does, it's going to be not because he feels some sense of obligation or personal loyalty to Manafort or Cohen. He doesn't seem to feel loyalty to anybody except himself.
And, of course, David, from the legal challenge for the president to reach out and pardon any of them now, as Rudy Giuliani is making noises about possible pardons, is that they then lose their Fifth Amendment rights. So if you were to pardon Manafort, tomorrow for some period, for everything he's charged with right now, the next day, that the special prosecutor can put Manafort under oath in the grand jury, and he has no ability to claim the Fifth Amendment.
That's such an important point, and that is the sort of the structural trap the president faces. People will start testifying against him because they will be exposed to a penalty for contempt of court if they do not. The dangling the pardon may be a lot more strategic for the president than ever granting a pardon.
John Harwood, John Heilemann, David Frum, thank you all for joining us on this Friday night. Really appreciate it.